Is your 401k at risk? That is the question. I often wonder how everyone, well, majority of people here, at least in US, uh, has automatic deduction from their payroll into 401k, where is basically automatically getting invested, rather it's a bond or equity or whatnot. And and we're told that if you do that for a long period of time, eventually you'll have enough to retire, on the notion that you're gaining dividends, and you're gaining 7 to 8 or 10 or whatever percentage annually, and it's getting compounded, and supposedly you'll have enough to retire. But the real question, I would argue, is it safe? In other words, if let's suppose we were to invest whatever percentage of our income, and it's getting routed into this 401k, right? Whether it's a 401k or whether it's a Roth for tax advantage, whatever case may be, you're essentially investing into a market, right? You're putting funds into 401k for your retirement. And I don't care what return you're getting, whether it's 1% or 5% or 20%, whatever it is, and you're compounding that for however time, 5 year, 10 year, 15 year, 20 years, whatever. And at some point you retire. But the question is that enough, right? Or is it safe, I should say? And most recently, I am getting the impression that it's not safe. And even if you're making a double digit return, it's not enough to justify putting money into it. And I say this because my concern over the base currency, in this case base currency as in US dollar, so whatever investment that we would have in our portfolio, eventually the underlying currency for that investment is US dollar, right? So if something were to happen to US dollar, rather it's a change in global reserve status or currency devaluation or even currency collapse, then question is the investment safe? Is it protected, right? And what would happen in the scenario where currency would collapse or currency devaluation or change in global reserve status? And I don't know what the true answer is, but I would argue that everyone's portfolio, in my opinion, is at risk. Sure, the government or systems or whatever institution may come up with a plan to transition your portfolio from old currency to new currency, right? Rather, we're changing from traditional US dollar to CBDC. They'll use some ratio to convert it over, but my question is your investment safe from currency collapse or change in financial system? So anyway, for this reason, I have very little trust in the so-called traditional retirement. And perhaps it made sense back in the 70s, 80s, and even 90s. I think we are now in the modern world where the debt-based financial systems is in the verge of collapse. And I think we are already, I would say, that already took place in 2008. The financial system completely collapsed, and we're probably in the life support at the moment. And in matter of, I guess, in my lifetime for sure, uh, something will happen. I don't know what that is, but if I have to guess, it may be a new financial system that will come out. But before we get there, we obviously will have to see the collapse and then go into the new, whatever the new system may be. So, in the event of our transition from debt-based system to perhaps a new global reserve, commodity-based currency, or gold standard, or gold reserve, or silver reserve, whatever it is, uh, before we can get there, we will see some pain. And in that time, as we go through the pain, how safe is your investment? And if you think that your 401k portfolio or your brokerage account is safe from all that, think again. I think you better make sure you have some way to diversify against those odds. And I think if you look at some of my one of the previous video on why silver matter, I think I talked a bit about that, why silver matter, and perhaps investing into precious metal might be the key to avoid such collapse. So anyway, my takeaway here is that there is a risk in our retirement portfolio, in our 401k portfolio. Whether it's a small risk, medium risk, or large risk, whatever the case may be, there is a risk. And the question is, what are you going to do about it to protect yourself from that risk, right? Uh, Whatever it is, there's still a time, and there's still a time to align yourself in such that if that whatever the risk, small or medium or large, were to happen, you are still come out safe on the other end. So anyway, if so, for that reason, at least what I have done is I have significantly reduced my contribution into retirement. I am actually putting more and more into precious metal instead, for that obvious reason. So if the and you know, if you look at the BRICS, for example, the BRICS is the, the five countries: the Brazil, uh, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These are the five key players who makes up a large percent of our GDP globally, are joining together to come up with a currency that is commodity based, and they're imposing something that would essentially take the US dollar off a global reserve, right? So if that happened, I guess question is not if, I think it's already happening. Question is when that really happens and start getting traction, then the US dollar is at risk of losing global status as a global reserve. And we already see that, where China and Russia are using Chinese yuan or Russian ruble instead of US dollar. So the petrodollar, as far as uh, choice of currency as a global reserve for exchange of commodities such as oil, which has been happening for, I don't know, last 40, 50, 60 years, now all of a sudden is not happening, right? More and more countries are using other mechanism, other currency as a mean of exchange as opposed to US dollar. So if not if, but when we get to a point where US dollar demand is significantly reduced, then we may be looking at change in global reserve status. And if and when that happens, then question is what happens to everything that is that has a base currency of US dollar. So if you have if we have an investment that is base currency in US dollar, what would happen to it? I don't know. If someone has a insight or thought around this, I'll be happy to hear on that. I too am a bit curious as to what could happen, what would happen, right? The other thing is, if I think about this topic more and more, let's say that we do come across this new global currency, and let's say that the goal were to become the global reserve again, or the new global standard, right? Gold standard. Then what could happen is one ounce of gold could be, I don't know, I'm just putting a number out there, 10, 20, 30, $50,000, right? So if they were to use that as a ratio, then could that be used as a ratio in defining what would be the new value going into the new currency? And if that's the case, then I don't know, $1 million or $10 million portfolio could very well be just short of less than six figure. So is that really a big hit or is that a big gain? I don't know. And I would argue, I think the investment in general that is calculated in the base currency, US dollar, is at risk. Anyway, I'm just talking out loud here, trying to think of uh, ways to hedge it, protect it, and I don't see any better way than using precious metal, gold, and silver. So, anyways, stay humble, stack silver, and if you have any insight, I'll be happy to read your comments, or you want to reach out to me and we can talk through that. Y'all have a good one. Thanks. Bye.